Jade Walters.
Rainy Stock.
All right. Okay, so should I go first? Kind of nervous. Okay, I'm going to set this just in case. All right. When my children were young, we often took trips to the city park. I would spend time pushing them in the swings or helping them cross the monkey bars. I was right there with them as they discovered how to use the rope ladders and gathered their courage to attempt the twisting slide. My memories of our adventures at the park also include snapshots of other children whose parents weren't there. Many times they arrived in small buses or vans. The adults would bark instructions at the children who seemed indifferent about their field trip to the park. The children would be left to entertain themselves while the adult supervision sat in the shade nearby. There were no acknowledgments of advancing skills or summoned courage, but sometimes the sounds of children's laughter and playing was drowned out by the hollering from the supervision. I was actually surprised by how many times a child from one of these groups would start up a conversation with me, a complete stranger. They were being cared for, but something was missing. In 2016, approximately 70% of mothers with children 18 years old and younger were working outside the home, according to the United States Department of Labor Women's Bureau. In the last 40 years, there has been a significant increase of 27.1% in the number of mothers who have children under the age of 3 who are in the workforce. With over 21 million mothers working outside the home, according to an issue brief from the Department of Labor, one has to wonder what is happening with the children. According to a population report in 1993, almost 10 million children in the United States under the age of 5 while their mother was working outside the home. 52% of those children were preschoolers and cared for in child care facilities. Why are mothers working? Are they working to escape the sometimes frustrating and always exhausting labor associated with mothering? Are they working because they feel more successful when they earn a paycheck? They don't have any other choice. There is reason to believe that mothers feel societal pressure to work outside the home. Even former President of the United States, Barack Obama, made it clear that women can only reach their full potential if they are in the workplace. To really make sure that women are full and equal participants in our economy, it requires not just changing laws, it requires changing attitudes. I want to ensure that women are full and equal participants in the economy. We need better child care, daycare, and early childhood education policies. We know investing in high-quality early childhood education makes all the difference in the world, and those kids will do better. But the President of the United States thinks that investing in child care programs and daycare is going to help our children do better than if they were raised at home by their mother. Children who spend 20 hours per week in a non-parental care are at greater risk for developing insecure attachment and having weak emotional bonds. Research done by the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, children who spent more time in child care were somewhat less cooperative, more disobedient, and more aggressive at age 2 and age 4.5 and in kindergarten. We know from this research that children do better when they are raised in a sensitive and nurturing environment. This most often involves the person who loves them the most, their mothers. There is no policy to help mothers who do not have the desire to mother their children at home. But for those mothers who are working because they need that little bit of extra cash each month, I propose that the government could provide an incentive for them to stay in their homes and provide the kind of positive mothering the future leaders of our nation need. Care credit was instituted to lessen the imbalance between the cost of daycare and the extra income made in 2-earner households by allowing a limited credit for certain expenses related to the care of a child. This is an incentive for women to work outside of the home. It occurs to me that there could be a way for mothers who make the decision to stay at home and raise their children to benefit from the same tax credit. For example, right now a family would receive a tax credit of up to 35% on $6,000 or less of child care expenses. If a stay-at-home mom received the same tax credit, the amount would be $2,100 per year. This small investment each year will have a huge impact on not only the child, but also on the family, as well as society as a whole. Oprah Winfrey once said, "I believe the choice to become a mother is the choice to become one of the greatest spiritual leaders there is. to create an environment that's stimulating and nurturing, to pass on a sense of responsibility to another human being, to raise a child who understands that he or she is created from good anything. I know for sure that few callings are more honorable. To lay down the mothering as small is to crack the very foundation on which greatness stands. It is on her back that great nations are built. My proposal addresses a problem we have in society that is only getting bigger. It gets to the root of the problem by supporting mothers so they can stay at home with their children. This policy will support mothers who choose to spend their time saving our most important national resource, our children.
Nice, thank you. So I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was reading a study. I'm sorry, I wrote it down so that I wouldn't forget my question. I was reading a study about how there is a positive correlation with mothers and working and non-parental conflicts. Or sorry, so like they have less conflict with their children if they're working rather than if they're single and staying at home. Which is kind of in disagreement with everything that you're talking about, how like if mothers are at home, then it's better for the children. So what do you think about this study? Why do you think that they would have a study about how single mothers being at home causes more conflict than being at work?
Okay, addresses single mothers as much as parents, where there's two incomes. In the paper I wrote in my blog post, I addressed that there are circumstances where a mother is depressed, not capable of providing positive parenting, and those would be outliers, I would guess, that most mothers that have a baby want to take care of, want to do a good job being a mother. There are people who aren't capable of being a positive mother, and studies do show that if that's the case, if there's depression or something, the children do better in a quality child care. If the child care is not quality, however, which happens most often, then the child still, I think the child still does better at home than in bad child care, but if it's bad at home, the child would, of course, do that. So this one is focused on, you know, those mothers that want to stay at home but maybe can't. Did I answer the question?
Sorry, I had to put it off mute. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I thought you did really good. Had really good research and everything that showed what you were talking about. So what would you say to those people that kind of demean the stay-at-home mom, you know?
I would point out that studies show that children become more responsible citizens of our country when the mothers are raising them with the values and teaching them how to, you know, to others and help others and all those sort of things. When there was a study that they took two sets of parents. One set of mothers, there was a group of children, and one of the group had mothers who were in prison. And the mothers that were in prison were in there for, they had either intellectual disabilities or they were behavioral disabilities, the mothers did. And the mothers had to take care of these babies in prison. And then the other group of babies were in an orphanage where a caregiver was assigned 8 babies. The children who were cared for by the moms in prison developed normally. The ones that were raised in the orphanage with these to one caregiver all had developmental delays and problems. And so that shows that mothers have are in prison have a lot of, they do a lot better job with their own babies than the one-on-one than children that are in daycare.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Now, you may have addressed this while I was out of the room, but why do you think so many women feel like they have to go into the workforce to be fulfilled? Like what things have happened? What events have led to that type of thing?
I think President Obama's speech is a good example of that, how he came right out and talked about how women are not fulfilling all of their, reaching their potential unless they're in the workplace. So when the President of the United States makes comments, oh, sorry, did you?
I meant to press mute, and then I pressed totally different. I like pressed something on my bookmarks bar. Okay.
I was like, she's on. So I was just talking about President Obama. When President Obama made that comment about how women reaching their potential unless they're in the workplace, I think that is a reflection on, that goes to every woman that hears that, where they feel like maybe they're not to be doing enough or whatever. And I've had for years and years and years, I would go with my husband on business trips where I met with colleagues. They're all women. They're all women in these business owners, and they would, you know, of course they'll ask me what I do, and I'm like, oh, I stay home and take care of my family. I have, we have 7 children, and they're all, to say, they're like, oh, like that, the conversation ends like they don't think it's they just really, you get the feeling that sometimes that it's not that important, and it is. And of course I got over that, because I do think it's the most important thing. Like coming from the President of the United States contribute.
Thank you.
All right, I think that was 5 minutes. So
yeah, it was. Can I go next?
Yeah.
I just want to get it done.
You guys did good questions.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm gonna start, and I actually.
Shoot, she keeps freezing.
Or I were born out of wedlock. We did spend most of our time on our own. What?
You froze for a while there.
I have a horrible connection here. I'm so sorry.
Shoot.
Yeah, I missed some of your speech too. I didn't hear all of your speech.
I'm wondering if there's, okay, I'm going to open up the chat, and if we lose you, I'm going to try and, I don't know if it'll freeze that too, but I'll say we lost you, okay?
Okay. All right. Is the
So
chat open?
Again. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me? Am I good? Yeah? Okay. All right. I will start over. All right. I grew up in a family that consisted of a mother and a half-brother. While neither my brother nor I were born out of wedlock, we did spend most of our time on our own. We both had divorced fathers from our mother. Worked. We knew our fathers and spent at the very least every other weekend with them. It was great we had that time with them, but they weren't around all of the time, and our mom worked, so neither was she. I am sure those of you listening may think, what is wrong with anything she said? She became independent, had a father still around, and she seems to be doing fine. While some of this may be true, things changed very drastically. At only 13 years old, I lost my father. My mother was my primary caregiver, and I didn't have her around. According to a study done in China, children in 6th grade who were raised by a single parent performed lower academically. While I was raised in America, my academics have proven the same. I feel like I have had to work twice as hard in my schooling because I never had anyone around to help me with my homework. My grades did suffer, even in 6th grade like these students, and didn't start to resolve until my junior year of high school. Even now, I still have a hard time asking for help and don't perform as well on things that may come naturally to other students. I could continue on about how this negatively affected me, But there are other children out there who are negatively affected too. Even though I had a father who was present, there are many children out there who don't have a father who is present and isn't involved in their life either. According to another study done, children were likely to experience neglect from fathers who were not only in the home, but were also not involved in their lives. While I have statistical proof for neglect, I have seen children with uninvolved fathers experience that neglect as well. They feel a lack of self-worth from not having a father who cares and feel a need to overperform in order to impress their father. I could continue on with the other negative impacts single motherhood has on children, but it's time to switch course. I don't know of any caring and loving parent who would want their child to experience low academics, neglect, and low self-worth. It does not logically make sense. According to Idaho state law, children are put into the home with the best interest in mind, meaning if two parents get divorced, custody is not only determined by where the child lives and who makes the major decisions in the family, but it is also determined by things like the circumstances of everyone involved, including disability, life stability, and whether domestic violence is involved. While this is more on a state level, Idaho seems to be going in the right direction, the majority of which the parent the child is in custody of is largely determined by what will be good for the child. However, there is still reason for a good parent to get full custody and the father to have no involvement in the child's life. I propose that the law is changed to have the father have some sort of involvement in the child's life if the mother is in full custody, whether it is regularly scheduled trips, spending time with the child as long as the mother is there, or in worst case scenarios, only a requirement to make phone calls. The child has a right to know who both parents are and can have positive influence even if the parents aren't actually together. While the parents being together does create better education options and less stress on the child, there are good options for helping children who don't have any active role of a father in their life, starting with this one. Okay.
Are you ready for questions?
Yes, I am.
Well,
sorry, and I saw that it froze, so I don't know how long it froze for.
Not that long.
Okay.
It seemed like it froze for very, very long.
Okay.
So
Yeah, not long.
I know that was probably like the shortest you've frozen, so that was good. I had a question in regards to whether children benefit more when they have both biological parents in their life, or if they can still experience the same benefits from having a mother and a father who are married and have a healthy marriage. Like, do they benefit more from it being their mother and their father separated, or do they benefit more from a mother figure or father figure who are married? Does that make sense today?
Okay, so are you saying that like if the two parents are divorced, but let's say they have a healthy relationship with each other, would they benefit more than if the parents were married and didn't have a healthy relationship?
No. Okay, so like, so say one of the parents gets remarried. Like, does it benefit them more to be in a home where the parents have remarried and have a step parent or something? Or
no, actually it doesn't, because if you read the text, it talks about step families a lot. I don't remember what chapter it was in. It was a few chapters ago, but it talks about or was it? Sorry, it wasn't this text. I'm sorry, I'm getting my two classes confused. I have a child 430 and a child 460 class, but the child 430 class talks about step families in our text, and it talks about how children who are raised in step families, they are more likely to be more aggressive, have lower academic standing, and it says that like while we know that there's a 50% divorce rate for first marriages, there's a 60% divorce rate. And the most interesting fact was if the parents bring children into the marriage. So like if there's a step family and they have, or if there's like a mom and she has some children, and then there's a father and they have children, and they both like intertwine and have more children like all together, that actually causes more stress among the children and greater behavioral problems. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I have a question for you. What about those that oppose saying that you need to have a mother and a father present, such as gay marriage?
So, well, there wasn't a ton of research that has been out there, and there actually is a lot of research that says like there really aren't any dividing facts between parents who are gay or lesbian and parents who are heterosexual. There is a little bit of a greater stressor on like, if I remember right, it's like the sons and daughters, like because they don't have that opposite influence, they might have more behavioral problems. If I remember right, it said something about like sons, especially sons. Like it didn't say a lot about daughters, but like sons who don't have a father figure in their life, like they're more likely to have like behavioral problems or academic issues. And I think it's because they don't have that. So you know how the father gives you that like active aspect, and you can like, and you have like more of that play aspect, and they're allowed to do like rough housing and stuff like that. That's actually really good developmentally for a child. We've talked about how like rough housing is actually really good. So when they don't have that, they can't get out those like natural hormones and stuff because they just have their two moms.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you said something in there about you want to make it so fathers can have time with their children if the mothers have full custody.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering if there's reasons why. Do you know if there's reasons why a father wouldn't be given joint custody, and if it's for reasons that are, I'm wondering if like for a father not to get custody, does he have to have some problems that it would be a worry for him to spend time with the child? Anyway, do you know?
Yeah, so I mentioned that there's things like if there's like domestic violence in the home, or if like it isn't close to where the child lives, or where they've had like, I didn't mention it in this, but in the Idaho state law it talked about like if the child doesn't have like they wouldn't adjust well. So everything, which I love that everything is about the child and like what's in the best interest for them. So the parents aren't the sole factors in.
Uh-oh.
Involvement with their children, like any involvement, it causes greater like self-esteem issues. And so they need to have some sort of involvement. And I said like, so, let's say, okay, so for me, my dad was an alcoholic. Before he passed away, like he was a severe alcoholic. And for several years growing up, my mom had pretty much full custody of me. And any visits, she had to be there with us because it was like she was afraid because when he was drunk, he was really dangerous. Like he burnt my leg with a firework one time, like when I was like 1 and stuff. And so like issues like that, we have to have some sort of like thing where there's somebody else involved, or like I said, in worst case scenarios, even just like a phone call, but something that keeps them involved.
That you want the father to be involved some way. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, what did you say? It froze.
Okay, so you want to just make sure the child has can be with their father some way, even if it's a phone call or something.
Somehow, even if it's just like a Skype call. Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right.
You mind if
Yeah, you can go.
Go ahead.
Okay. I don't know if Juliana's. She looks kind of frozen. Okay. Should I start?
Yeah.
Today I want to address the topic of religious freedom. I'll be discussing what it is, how it is being threatened, supportive evidence, and what you can do to protect your religious freedom. It's quite common to hear the phrase, "It doesn't affect me, so why should I care?" Or likewise, "Live and let live." These phrases sound good and decent, but how well does that indifference really serve us? If we applied that to every situation in society, there would be chaos. We need to care because so many recent court rulings and laws passed affect our religious freedoms, our families, and our futures. Religious freedom has been around for a very long time, sometimes to one extreme or another. Currently, it's the other, the desire for religion to be null. David Little of Berkeley University explains that centuries ago, one could be killed for going against religious beliefs. Now, moving closer to modern day, the separation of church and state made sense with the many different diverse beliefs that are now current, and no one should be coerced into believing something that they don't. So, hence the separation of church and state. I have ancestors that sacrificed their homes, livelihoods, and some of them even their lives in pursuit of religious freedom. This country has come leaps and bounds in protecting the religious liberties of its citizens. However, we may be foolish to think these freedoms will be ours forever. Because of their examples and great sacrifice to live their religion, their morals, and their conscience as they so believed, it empowers me to have those same desires. A study done by Thiessen and Wilkins shows that attendance at religious services have plummeted in the last few years, as more people claim to be religious nuns, meaning they either don't affiliate with a religion, they are atheists, or somewhere in between. In fact, 1 in 5 Americans and Canadians claim this title. Some religious nuns are spiritual, but studies suggest even this is trending downward. In a 2012 study by Goidel and Associates studying religious liberty, 39% of people agreed religious liberties are being threatened, and that rose to 54% in 2014. So why does this matter in the context we're discussing? It matters because the freedom to live as our morals and conscience would so guide us are being questioned. This affects not only every individual, but every family and child. Legal cases are popping up all over the United States concerning situations in which people or privately owned businesses are being strong-armed through litigation to provide services that are in opposition to their own moral beliefs. A Colorado baker was sued for declining to make a wedding cake for a same-sex couple and is currently awaiting a hearing with the Supreme Court. In California, hospitals are being sued for not performing sex reassignment surgery, and schools across the country are being told they must let children of different biological sexes use the bathrooms. Religious Freedom Act of 1998 is a policy that defends individuals' freedoms, religious freedom, and protects from persecution. This is important as many of the cases being brought to court are winning because there are laws and policies that are protecting our religious freedom. Therefore, we as citizens benefiting from these freedoms have a duty to maintain these rights and freedoms we have, not only for us, but for our future posterity. We need to stay informed, get educated, and research the facts, and be aware of what's going on around us. Some of my favorite organizations to do this, they help promote religious freedom for individuals and families, include United Families International and Alliance Defending Freedom. Donate, learn, or get involved any way you can. Religious freedom is one of those things that we assume we will always have until it is threatened. We take it for granted. Not protecting freedom results in loss of freedom. If we are to keep our freedoms, we must be vigilant in fighting for what we want. We must care more.
Thank you. So what would you say to somebody who is atheist and maybe doesn't have that same approach on like religious freedom?
Well, I would just remind them that it's in the Constitution, that it is a constitutional right, and that just as they have the right to be atheist, a religious person has the right to believe as they want without laws or policies being forced upon them to change their moral stance on an issue.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, good job. What was that? You gave a percentage. You said it went from 39% to 54%. And what was that regarding? It was
that. That was regarding people who felt like their religious liberties were being attacked or threatened.
Okay.
So it's risen within the last couple years.
Yeah.
People are feeling that and seeing that in society.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think of it. That was good. I'm trying to think of a good question. Like the transgender bathroom thing, you have to go to Washington to fight that, you know? Like you can't even do that in our own area now.
Right. There's so many awesome organizations that are fighting these laws that are being, you know, these laws and policies that are being passed. And so there's a lot of support for families and children to find ways around things that are kind of being pushed upon them. So
here's a good question. So if I donate to one of those organizations that you mentioned, they could, they might be the best way to fight some of this stuff going on.
I think it's a great way to fight, to fight some of the stuff that's going on. There's so many people for like the legality of it, and lawyers and researchers, and so that would be an awesome way to fight this.
Yeah, that's good.
And so many people want not only not want us to have religious beliefs, they don't necessarily care. They say live your beliefs in your home, just not in society. But that goes against the moral code too, because obviously our morals will transfer to society as well, you know?
Yeah.
Because they're making it be so. Okay.
Wow.
Well, that's interesting that you said that, because like in people suing, isn't that kind of contradicting?
Yeah.
Anyway, but I have a question in regards to like how separation of church and state, like how people are using that argument to kind of like take away religious freedom. You know, they're like kind of, I feel like they're perverting it. I don't know. I think I just made a comment more than posed a question. But,
no, I totally agree with you. It was the separation, because you know the founders and the in history, they didn't want to coerce people into living one, you know, state religion, and so that was a good thing. But how it's on the opposite side, where people are not wanting anyone to be able to have any say of how religion affects in government or society or anything. So way the wrong way.
Wow.
Okay. Thanks.
Very good. Good job. Okay.
Okay, I was about to start talking. Okay, sorry. Just a second. Yes, hey, bro.
Did you find a lot of research, Jade?
It was hard to find research on how the racism directly affected families and children, but it was from there. But you know, really. So.
You need to be very quiet. Okay, it's mommy's turn to talk.
Good.
Okay, ready? Okay. Yeah, then it'll be your turn when mommy's all done talking. Okay. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Here you go. I want you to take the time now to think back to your own school experience. Did you ever take an art class or music class? Did you ever have the opportunity to participate in or watch a theater production put on by fellow schoolmates? Hopefully, like me, you were fortunate enough to experience all of these things throughout your school education. From performing in my elementary school's choir as a young girl to creating artwork displayed in my high school's visual and performing arts showcase, I experienced the joys and reaped the benefits of fine art and education. As art has many benefits that span beyond just creativity, imagination, and innovation, art also helps in problem solving, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration, as well as academic achievement. In 2001, the No Child Left Behind law caused more federal power to be exercised in making schools responsible for academic progress. If schools failed to do so, they were subject to losing federal funding. Though the No Child Left Behind law has been replaced by the Every Student Succeeds Act, the law still has lasting effects on education practices today. Unfortunately, in the wake of the No Child Left Behind law, much emphasis was placed on practices such as standardized and high-stakes testing. Initially, the NCLB law focused on core subjects such as mathematics and science, but over time came to include art. Despite the recognition of art being beneficial in public education, the shift came too late, and many schools still give focus and funding to other subjects. This has left the arts at a disadvantage when it comes to education agendas, thus leaving children at a disadvantage. Regardless of its limited presence in education policy, most people do agree that the arts are crucial in providing a well-rounded education. This attitude needs to be reflected in our nation's policies. The only way this will happen is if parents and citizens alike educate themselves on the true effects the No Child Left Behind law has made in our nation's education system. Then, in formulating evidence and research-based advocacy, the message that art is important for our children can be effectively communicated. Information on art education and how you can make a change can be found on the websites for the National Art Education Association, as well as the Arts Education Partnership. At the start of this 2017-2018 school year, the Every Student Succeeds Act has begun to be implemented. This new change has been made to take the power of education back from federal lawmakers and give it back to our educators. Under the ESSA, we can hope for a difference in regards to the role of art in public education. However, it is our responsibility to see that our local schools are using this new amendment to assure that our children have access to art education. There we go.
Good job. You did really good.
Good job.
Okay. So my question for you is, can you explain the negative a little bit about the
One more time. You cut off at the end. The negative of the what?
Can you explain a little bit more the negative effects of the No Child Left Behind law?
Yeah, so what the No Child Left Behind law initially did was it put a lot of power of education policies in, like the government was heavily involved. And like that video we watched the other day, like the more the government is involved, the smaller the citizens are involved. And when it comes to public education, it is important for parents and educators especially to be involved. So the No Child Left Behind Act was increasing focus on curriculum driven to make students pass the tests efficiently. And these types of tests started in the second grade. So these young children were being placed in unnecessary pressure due to this testing, because teachers felt such a pressure from their schools to do well. Otherwise, there were incentives such as funding and grants that were lost if they couldn't make their students perform well on these tests.
Yeah.
I hope that helped.
I didn't realize. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jade. I'm sorry. I didn't know that the No Child had been left and No Child Left Behind had been gotten rid of.
Yeah, it's
eliminated. So
pretty recent. So like I think the act they just have like long names. So sorry, guys. That the Every Student Succeeds Act, like, because I'm sure you guys heard like the No Child Left Behind had like a lot of flack. So during Obama's administration, I think one of the last things he did was try and pass through like a reformation of it.
Mm. Oh wow!
So that's where the Every Student Succeeds Act comes from.
Still funding tied to the Every Child Succeeds?
Yes, so there's still grants that are so if you go, it's funny, it depends on where you go to for this information, but on the government site they are very careful with the language they use, but there are federal grants tied to it. Yeah, they don't call them incentives for obvious reasons. But.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Sorry, I am trying to think of a question. Like, it was just a good speech.
Thank you. That's the case. So
I'm like, what? No. So, have you heard of those programs? Like, they have schools that are like, because you talked a little bit about like how we have music and art and like all those things tied within our programs. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of those schools? So not programs. Have you heard of the schools that it's basically all based around like the arts rather than STEM? It's based around the arts. Do you think there's like do you think that's a positive thing to do to base it more around arts, or do you think it's more positive to base it around education? Where do you sit on that?
Well, okay, so personally I like the idea of kind of a child-centered learning. So like all the different types of learning, like kinetic and language and like auditory, so children all learn differently. So I feel like to a certain age, like I'm just thinking personally for my children, to a certain age I would love for them to have the opportunity to go to a school like that. So as long as that is like in the vein which they learn the greatest. However, I feel like at a certain point, children do need a little more structure, so that they can like learn things that can't exactly be like naturally learned. Like no child naturally learns like how to solve for X or things of that nature. Like the critical thinking skills that come from solving problems like in math and science and stuff. So I feel like both. I like both. But yeah, for at different times, at different stages of development. So
that answered my question. Yeah, I agree with you though. I'm very like an individualized learner type. I do the same thing. I believe in that a lot stronger. Sorry, I'm so tired, so my words are not coming out right. I believe in that a lot more than like other types of learning. But you know what's funny? I even believe in it like in high school and college, and I want to just rid of standardized testing.
Oh no.
She froze again. Did you use some how do I say it? Did you use some, what were your sources on yours, Juliana? Like did you use some I'm trying to remember what you said. You use the websites for the government programs, right?
Yeah, and like what do you want my references or
I just was trying to remember what they like the references that you used. But
I used some studies from like this journal linking arts and student achievement and social development.
Oh, that's right.
So some of the things I listed were from these studies were like the benefits that were found.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right. Good job, guys.
I'm like all sweaty right now. I didn't even
No, same. I was so nervous. I know you guys.
You
I'm
guys,
not so nervous.
you guys did awesome. Good job. All right. I will post this on the discussion board.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for helping with the schedule.
Yeah, sorry, this week was just weird. I'm actually glad we did it this morning because I needed the extra time this morning.
That's good. Okay.
Oh.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, you guys. Have a good day.
You too.